So life apparently appears to continue on and on, unabated by absolutely nothing. Nothing can ever interfere with all that is simply this empty fullness. It is absolutely everything. And it is appearing as absolutely everything from nothing, from no thing, from nowhere. And so the conjured self is either continuing to conjure the idea that it is a separate self that is separate from everybody and everything else. That either continues believing that that is so when it is not. It's only apparently appearing to be so. And yet, that is apparently and non-apparently so. It is both. And nobody knows how that is so. Nobody knows how and why that is so, simply because there are no separate, self-conjured, conjured selves anywhere to be found. If there's this appearance of a body-mind complex, action figure, that takes the appearance that is visibly observable in mirrors and is self-conjuring a very convincing idea that it is exclusively real and physically solid. It has believed that all along, ever since it began to learn and discover that which it had presumed had always been that way. When there is the apparent appearance of a newborn human corporeal form, it is already appearing in its natural state, so to speak, or its natural inherent appearance as an energetic movement, mingling and blending, coalescing, blending with absolutely everything already. It simply apparently appears to be, apparently and non-apparently appears to be the content of absolutely everything that appears, as absolutely everything appears. And yet, it's all temporally temporary. It is temporally temporary simply because it apparently appears to be that time is timing the apparent appearances and non-apparent appearances of absolutely everything that appears, that can appear as anything within the appearance of everything. And as the appearance of anything continues to appear, apparently and not apparently so, as time is timing the apparent appearance of absolutely everything, within that, it is presumed that anything can appear. That presumption of anything appearing is thought to be so simply because there is both the idea and conception of the appearance as it appears of its own accord and volition, and then there is a sense of a separate self-conjured self that believes it needs to identify and relate to that. Relates to absolutely everything that's appearing. And the manner by which a separate, self-conjured, conjured self relates and interacts with absolutely everything that appears, believes and conjures the idea that it must understand and must know about that. It must know and gain knowledge about absolutely everything that appears as it does, of its own accord and volition, as absolutely everything that apparently and non-apparently appears. In so-called non-duality circles, and then there's this new phrase, the neo-Advaitist. It apparently appears as though there's some type of new belief, some type of new spiritual teaching, religion that is being self-conjured. The conjuring of a modern religion, a modern spiritual belief. The neo-Advaitist is on the rise in 2019. No. It's just more conjuring. That's all that is. Be still, be silent. You're already being that anyway. And even though a self-conjured, conjured self gathers with other self-conjured, conjured selves, they group together and then they formed familiar, agreed upon spiritual teachings. None of that's necessary, never was. You know, the picture on the mantle and the flower arrangement, the satsang, the pre-planned satsang that's on the calendar. And oh yes, by the way, there's a steep price to pay as well. £300, maybe £500 retreat, downtown London. It's going to be a whole weekend at the Holiday Inn. Yes. Are you ready for that? Sure you are. Why? You're a pensioner, perhaps. Or you have a big inheritance. Or you have a lot of savings. Perhaps you live alone. Or perhaps you've come across a lot of money. So what are you going to do? Well, you've been into spiritual teachings all along. Throughout the 1990s, you were into all of those new agey type spiritual retreats, Reiki, meditative practice perhaps, Reiki, some type of a method of acquiring a higher state of consciousness or a greater way of being. Oh no, I better look into that because I want to be that. I want to be more than I think I am. Yes, I definitely do. Why am I seeking? Oh, I must be seeking because I must know. I must understand. There must be something more to just simply this. This is boring. See, the self-conjured, conjured self believes that if they are not engaged in some type of activity, okay, and this is, of course, is all obviously self-conjured. It is obviously a mistake. And it's not even these realities and these dream realities, all of these conjured realities of dream realms or dimensions or reality frames. So much can be conjured and it continues to be conjured. Why and how is that? Well, it's quite obvious. Because anything can appear in absolutely everything. As though there is content of appearances of activities happening. Oh, events are going on, things are going on out there, I'm going to miss out if I don't look into it and participate. Yes, that's what the self-conjured, conjured self believes. It believes that it must live and it continue to exist and that it is self-convinced that it exists in a precipitory reality frame, a precipitory dream. It has been told many times. The self-conjured self hears that and says, "Oh, I heard that this is a dream reality, and whatever you think about, then so it shall be. So as you think, therefore you are." No, it never was that. I think, therefore I am. No, that was the philosophy that was once believed by a group of self-conjured selves at one time. If we are to look at the history and the story of the earth, in the story of the earth there were once philosophers that believed, "I think, therefore I am." No, you're being. But you're mistaking thinking for being. No. Simply thinking and just consciousness alone is not what all this is. Consciousness is included. Time and space, consciousness, space and time, light and darkness, all of that is included. That is comprised of simply this. And there is no way to figure that out. There are absolutely no knowledge bases on the planet, and never will be. In fact, throughout the infinite universe, nobody can ever know and understand how this is so. How infinitudinal complexification can be so. And infinitudinal complexification is referring to all manners of energetic movements that are contained apparently and not apparently appearing as though they're contained in space and time, whereby absolutely anything is not only possible, but it can also manifest of its own accord and volition. Therefore, absolutely every thought that can be conjured, every thought that ever will be conjured, can manifest as an appearance somewhere throughout the infinite universe. As though there are somewheres, some places, fixed positions. No. There are no fixed positions in space and time. It only apparently appears to be that way. And yet, it is both apparent and non-apparent at the same time. We are apparent human corporeal appearances, units of local quality of consciousness energy forms, for an indeterminate duration in space and time, and yet impermanently so. And yet both. Real manifestations and unreal, from nothing, out of nowhere, the void. Unobservable, unknowable, unreal. Manifesting as though real, observable, and observably visible in mirrors. But that paradoxical situation is there as well, whereby it is temporally so. It is impermanently, temporally temporary. And yet, it is also timeless. That which we are as human corporeal, temporally temporary manifestations of human corporealness, as this human form that is believed to be so, is simply another conjuring. If that which we are communicating is subjective, then that which is subjective and referred to is referring to that which is both real and unreal, observable and unobservable, knowable and unknowable. Especially regarding Advaita. Advaita without the Vedanta. Whenever it is spoken, that is the Advaita, the spirit of the law, so to speak. The Vedanta is described, is the written, or it is the communicated and recorded. Recorded how? Perhaps placed in a book, published works. These video presentations can be considered Vedanta as well, but it is both the Advaita and Vedanta. Just that same idea of subjectivity, if we are to refer to non-duality as a subject, and to speak of that in just casual conversation. Now, these casual conversations of communications can be apparently appearing to be interactions between one human corporeal unit of local quality of consciousness that's temporally temporary. What else does it believe it can do? It's not really doing. It used to mistake doing for being. It is just simply being. And once it is recognized that that particular human corporeal manifestation has a unique frequency of resonance, it is not separate, because it is likened to an electromagnetic impulse on a particular frequency, and yet it is still part of the infinitudinal complexification of the infinite universe. Just as a drop in the ocean is still part of the ocean, and yet is still ocean. The energetic movements, the waves, and all of the apparent appearance of movements of the ocean, unpredictable currents, all types of currents going in all types of different directions. It is that essence of the unpredictability of absolutely everything that is what we are. We are that. We are those energetic movements within the infinite universe. And this is referring to, of course, pure energy. But that cannot be understood. The best that any human corporeal manifestation has attempted to explaining it, coming up with an idea or an explanation of how can this be? How can this be? And they call it a problem. They call it a problem. The astrophysicist, the metaphysician, you view and you see these participants of the science and non-duality conferences, and they're referring to that as a problem because they can't figure it out. They don't know. As though it has to be no, it doesn't. It never did. Just simply be. Let it be. That's all. That's not so difficult. You've been doing that anyway. Now, doing? No. Figure of speech again. You haven't been doing anything because there's nothing that needs to be done. Many of us have heard that, haven't we? We have heard that in non-duality circles. There's nothing to be done for this to be what it is. Simply this. Empty fullness. Spacious aliveness. Nothing has to be done about it because it's already done. It's already whole, complete, and perfect, just as it is. Nothing needs to be done about it. Nothing needs to be taken away from it, and nothing needs to be added to it. It's already complete. It's already whole. It's perfect, so let it be. Well, what is there to do? Well, I need to know about this and that. I'm bored. No, you're not. Sure, boredom can be felt and experienced, but it's not being felt by what? That which you're not. That which you're not? Well, what am I not? Well, you're not that human corporeal manifestation that's appearing as though you believe it is separate from everybody and everything else. You're definitely not that. Definitely, absolutely not that. And that will be abundantly clear. It will be clear once either enough satsangs are attended or this message has been pounded into that self-consciously motivated self-conjured self. Because it believes it is self-conscious. It believes it's independent. It believes it has all the thoughts that it needs of its own to work with. And then it has all the books it needs to read on its shelves, or perhaps it just simply has plenty of links and websites and bookmarks, so it has plenty of those to refer to and go back and see, okay, well, there's this other meditative practice I heard about. Go check that out. They're still seeking. So obviously, if there's still seeking going on, then there's a self-conscious conscious self that believes that they need to seek. You don't have to seek. You don't have to collect a knowledge base and collect all this information and books and websites and go attend retreats, this, that, and the other. It can simply be that beingness is the bottom line. That's just it. You're inherently being anyway. You have been all along. And you always will be beingness. How? How can that be? It is. You don't have to ask how or why. Nobody does. Why? Because there's nobody asking. The question is not being asked. The questions that are being asked by what and from what? The idea of a self-conscious conscious self that believes it is somewhere in a fixed position. As though, I'll give you an example of this obvious apparent appearance of a human corporeal unit of local quality of consciousness energy form. But what are we comprised of? Now when I refer to we, there is the apparent appearance of a we, yes. We, us, as in what? The human corporeal manifestations, and nearly 8 billion of them. But notice what's going on. The apparent appearance of births and deaths, births and deaths, births and deaths. I mean, and look, it is going on, even now, in space and time. Although we are not of space and time, we are both, yes, human corporeal manifestations in space and time, but temporarily so, for an indeterminate duration. Impermanently so. And that indeterminate duration, there's still so much more going on that is beyond comprehension. And that is what we are comprised of. The beyond comprehension and that which is unknowable, that which is unobservable, that which is unreal, is relegated to the unknown, is relegated to non-existence, timelessness, outside any type of parameters. Now these parameters that are thought to be parameters are just apparent appearances of parameters. That's all they are. Time and space. They are only apparently appearing to be limitations. Just as there are doors to different rooms in, let's say, your house, or in a home, a flat, wherever you might be living. Just taking the idea, the subject of a house, that there's windows and doors. But even that house, of course, is an illusion. And the house is a dream. Absolutely everything that appears to what? To the self-conscious conscious self. It's going to appear as a dream. No. Absolutely everything, empty fullness, absolutely spacious aliveness, the absolute, apparently appears to appear as though it's a dream. It's not going to allow anybody that believes they are a separate person or a separate sense of self, that which is of its own accord and volition, that is absolutely everything that appears empty fullness, will never allow one single human corporeal manifestation to know and to understand and have an understanding of that as though they are a supreme being, as they are part of some type of special hierarchy, the highest level of consciousness. You hear that, and there are spiritual books on some shelves spiritual literature, all fictitious, of course, fictional information. Throughout the 1990s, books like that were being published left, right, and center. Spiritual books, even about entertaining the idea of extraterrestrial humanoids. Still the human corporeal form, but conjuring the idea that there are humanoid beings on other planets throughout the infinite universe, Earth-like planets that are similar, except the human corporeal form just appears a little bit differently, because why? Energetic movements. Does it matter? No. See, that's how nothing matters. The matters of mattering and not mattering. Does anything matter? No. Literally. Literally. No thing matters. Why is that not mattering? Because there is nobody for that to matter, you see. There's no independent, single, self-conjured conjure self anywhere to be found. That all of this that simply is matters to it. In other words, a personal presence exclusively. We're not that. We're both. The personal and impersonal, simultaneously personal and impersonal presence. Real manifestation, unreal, non-local, timelessness, timeless, as referred to with the birthday and birthright of Andreas Müller in Germany. He refers to the timeless wonder. Yes, it is wonderful. It's amazing. It's extraordinary how everything continues to apparently appear as it does of its own accord and volition. And there's nobody that can do anything about it, because there's nobody that has to do anything about it. If anybody needed to do anything about all of this, then there would be that. But it's not that way. It is only thought to be. So the mental thought system plays up on what? The self-conjured conscious self. With beliefs and ideas and activities, doings, knowings, all of that. And yet it's already simply being all along. It's inherently alive. The aliveness to beingness, awareness, aware to being aware. That's simply beingness right there. Oh, but that's too boring though. I want to be able to interact. I want to be able to do something. I want this. I want that. See, there's the desires and the wants. And so what happens? It gets back into saying, no, I want to stay. I want to stay that way. I don't want to hear about this, so I want to ignore it. Stay away from non-duality. You know, because once that separate sense of self drops, once it is realized that it never was that way to begin with, it never was. It never was an exclusively real person. It wasn't an individual. It wasn't a self-regulated, self-managing, self-sustained, separate self from everybody and everything else. Just because it can pull out a birth certificate and say, look, I am a real person. I'm an individual. Look, I have a name. I have a forename and a surname. I have parents. I have a lineage. I have birthrights. I have an ancestry. That's proof enough, see? I am a single person. These neo-Advaitans, these people about non-duality, they're crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. See, a majority of people are like that. Why? Why are a majority of people that way? Because they are groups of self-conjured conjured selves that have yet to recognize that it is not that way. That they are not a separate. They are not groups of separate self-conjured conjured selves. They never were that. Even now, if they're still believing that, all they're simply doing, obviously, is conjuring. Conjuring more of those beliefs in a separate sense of self. Reinforced how? Very easy. Very, very easy to reinforce that, but very difficult, seemingly so, very difficult to realize, to self-realize, the self-inquiry. It is. Once that self-inquiry unravels enough, see, it's so tightly wound simply because so much time, in space and time, had been invested in the idea of a separate sense of self. It's just how it turned out, apparently so. It apparently appears that the societal structure is set up in that way. The societal structure is set up in such a way to reinforce the idea that there are unique people in the world. That yes, you are a very special person, unlike anybody else on the entire planet, on the entire Earth. See, that is reinforced in the very beginning. Even in the psychology of human behavior, for self-esteem, for self-worth, you must realize, you must know that you are a separate person in the world. And so you need to understand all the things that are good for you and avoid all the things that are bad for you. So easy to be convinced of that, to believe that you are a separate person. And then it's easily reinforced from day one. I mean, right during the birth, right there and then, it's all planned. The societal structure has it set up that way. Is it purposely that way, on purpose, just to say, all right, we got another new one on the way, and let's get them integrated into society real quick. How are we going to do that? Well, let's immediately stamp a number on them. In America, of course, it's the Social Security number. It used to be after the first 2 years. No, actually, it was until you were 15 at one time, back in the 60s and 70s. Now, and then they narrowed it down to 2 years, and now I think it's right when you're born. I believe so. In the United States, you get a Social Security number. Just as here in the United Kingdom, there is what's referred to as a national insurance number. Kind of similar to the Social Security number that's used in America. So there you have the reinforcements of a self-conjured, conjured self, and that's how it was conjured. And somewhere roughly around, let's say almost the first 2 years of time gone by. We're always going to refer to time, although it's an illusion. We're still referring to that. Why? Because the self-conjured, conjured self believes in time. It uses time to keep track. How else are you going to believe that you are somewhere different? Unless, and somewhere different is also tied in with time. Time and space, places, here and then there. You're over there and I'm over here. No, we're everywhere. See, so it's that paradoxical situation. But if there's still a self-conjured, conjured self that believes that they are a separate person, separate from everybody and everything else, and they are convinced of that based on the birth certificate, based on the birthright, ancestry, family tree, that type of thing that supports the self-conjured, conjured self, that supports an individual, supports the idea of an individual. And the majority of us are like that. The human corporeal, process. It seems to be some type of process that's always been in place that way. But it seems to be changing, doesn't it? It seems to be appearing as though if we look into the story of Earth, there are many different versions of that as well. It just seems to go on and on, doesn't it? Just on and on and on that way. So many different stories of self-conjured, conjured selves. So many, the countless is great. 8 billion or so. If a human corporeal manifestation appears in space and time, then it is part of what? It becomes part of that history or the story of Earth. See, every human corporeal manifestation has a story, doesn't it? Sure it does. It has a story about itself because it's a legend in its own mind. Well, I mean, that's how the self-conjured self develops, doesn't it? It believes that. And it's convinced because of the public schools it went to, what it was exposed to. It really didn't have much choice, did it? Because it found itself in this particular dream reality. Is there more than one dream reality frame? Well, apparently, according to Dr. Thomas Campbell, he is an expert. He's a consciousness researcher. Whoa. Talk about credentials, man. Creds. Woo. This guy is an ex-NASA physicist. And I'm sure there are a lot of other NASA physicists, but not quite like this particular one. Dr. Thomas Campbell apparently appears to be quite unique. Unique in a sense similar to, let's say, a Stephen Hawking. Yeah, or an Einstein. He's bringing about new ideas, new frontiers, new realities. Oh yes, we need to conjure more of those. Because the old ones are getting quite boring, aren't they? We already know about that. We know so much about Reiki, meditative practices. We need something new to conjure. We need something new to conjure as though it's new. It's just conjuring another thought. It's taking consciousness, a mental thought system, and then it takes that local unit of quality conscious energy form that, oh man, leave it alone. Just let it be. But no, they can't do that. No. These self-conjured selves that are continuing to maintain and support the maintenance of the societal structure, especially through academia. You must go to school, and now it's a law. It's a law of the land. You go to the United States, you have truant officers to ensure that people are going to school. Yes. That's how serious the societal structure is. Why is it also serious? Well, you need to be economically viable too. You need to contribute. Yes. You must learn a skill set. And then get a job. Call it a career. Get serious about it. Yes, because you need to support the societal structure. See? How can you get out of that? Well, I tell you what, if you want to be outside the grid, yeah, if you want to do that, well then, don't pay your taxes. Then see what happens. Right? Don't pay your bills. See what happens. Don't pay the rent. Yeah? We'll make that house payment. See what happens. See? And is there any liberation in that? No, of course not. Does that really matter? No. But apparently it appears to matter. To what? Well, there's the paradox, isn't it? So if this is a dream, and if you just look for a latte each day and you get up and you just feed this body mind, yeah, it gets hungry. So, or if it gets tired, you put it to sleep, get some rest, wake up next day. Well, it gets hungry again, feed it. You know, the usual, so to speak, Groundhog Day activities. You know, there's a lot more to life, they say, than just eating, sleeping, going to the bathroom, going to work, having lunch, eating some more, taking a break, going back to work and put in so many hours, earn a paycheck, and that's a means to that end. What's the means to that end? Well, the means to it is to continue maintaining, paying for the use of utilities, the heating, in the winter of the house, of the home, the dwelling that you're paying for, you're paying rent each month. Could be 500, 600 quid a month, depending, of course, on, the type of dwelling that you may happen to live in, and that's referring to the UK. And it's just all part of the grid, isn't it? Obviously, it's part of the apparent appearance, okay, of the setup. There's this setup. So along comes another newborn, okay? It is thought to be a newborn. Well, we need to give it a name. It must have a birth certificate, because how else are we going to not only keep track of that individual person, to integrate them into society, into the societal structure, get them to go to school eventually? That's the plan. That's the way it has been working. In the United States, it works very similar to the way that it works, and that process that operates here in the United Kingdom. Well, we are familiar with that, aren't we? Yes, very familiar. Very familiar with going to school. Because absolutely every human corporeal manifestation, every human being has experienced that. Especially if you're this generation, this particular generation, if we're to look into timelines. They refer to baby boomers as well. That's another one. Between certain years, the 1960s, the late 50s and early 60s, and mid 60s to late 60s, somewhere around there, refer to baby boomers, where there was a boost in a spike, if you will, a peak in the population of all the main top 10, top 15 largest cities in the United States. And then you have this small island here in the United Kingdom, which is really interesting. I mean, you could place almost 3 United Kingdoms into the state of Texas alone, but that's just referring to areas, geographical areas. But just notice how the mind of a body mind of an action figure can just take an idea and run with it, so to speak. I mean, you just take any ideas and entertain the thoughts and ideas. That's amazing, isn't it? Or just simply ignore them all, because none of them matter. Is that the bottom line of the neo-Advaitist? Once there's been that collapse, once there is that self-realization that you were never a separate self all along, what is the bottom line of that? What is one to do next? You're not doing anything. You never were doing anything. See? Says, well, what am I going to do now? I don't know what to do. What should I do now? I don't know what to do on board. No, you're already being. You mean to tell me that you are being bored of being? I tell you what, if you're being bored of being, what's going to happen? Are you going to jump off a bridge? That's what you're going to do, aren't you? You know, it's serious. It seems serious, doesn't it? Especially, let's say, if it's a family member. Come on now, you care about that person. You love them. Sure you do. You have feelings. Well, yeah, body, mind goes through feelings. They don't have them. They don't own those feelings. It's just those feelings do arise. Yes. Yes. Feelings of concern. Feelings of love. And, there's unconditional love. But most of the time, love's conditional, isn't it? Especially for a conjured self that is so full of itself that all it cares about is itself. It doesn't care about nobody else. And that's when it gets very, very self-centered, isn't it? And yeah, but there's very few far in between you find in societies that are that way. Nobody wants to talk to them. Nobody wants to be around them. You say, oh man, that person's always complaining. Doesn't have a good thing to say about absolutely anything. A miserable sod. They say in the United Kingdom, there's a phrase, they always have this face like a slap baby's ass, When you slap a baby's ass and it makes that crying face like that, you know, and some people walk around like that all the time. They're always thinking that, oh man, life sucks, everything's crap. You're born, but then you die, and it's a bunch of, it's just hopeless. It's a hopeless case. Nah, you see, entertaining thoughts like that. If you believe you need to take them on, and then you become self-convinced, and then the conjuring that happens there. Man, if it's orbiting a human corporeal manifestation, an action figure, a local unit of quality conscious energy form, and if it's if the mind of that action figure begins to entertain certain ideas, then what happens? Then it begins to be self-convinced that everything is that way for it. And if it takes life to be its own, man, that's when it's really in trouble, so to speak. It's in its own trouble that it believes it's in, when it really isn't. It's just conjured. Absolutely every idea that's entertained by the mental thought system is simply a conjured idea of this, that, or the other, of a duality of some kind. Oh man, my life sucks. It's not good enough. What do I need to do? I need to do something about it. No. You simply realize that your life is not that important. And besides that, you don't have a life of your own. Just simply recognize that you're being. Okay? That's all. You don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to know anything about it. Just be. And then the traveling lighter just happens, apparently, seems to happen on its own. That's what Paul Hederman is referring to when I say the birthright, the birth name and birthright of Paul Hederman. And he's quite popular in non-duality circles. He can be considered as a neo-Advaitist, using that phrase. Now, the message of Advaita Vedanta had been hidden for thousands of years, and it originated in the Upanishads, the written Sanskrit messages in the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Upanishad, and those types of recorded, these writings of Vedanta were recorded with the very first Upanishads that were wandering about in the wilderness. And they all gathered after wandering about and exploring mind, exploring consciousness, the self-inquiry. And then that's kind of how it developed. But that too had to be conjured. That too was conjured. It's the same energetic movement, very similar, except it is more of an all-encompassing type of energetic movement. In other words, it's a vertical type of uploading. The infinite universe, absolutely everything, the essence of all energy, pure energy. And trying to extrapolate some type of arrangements of English words and terminologies to try and conjure up an understanding. It's futile. It's futile. Trying to grasp and grapple and put together just the right text to put all of this together, it can't be done. Attempts are continuing, though. You go into YouTube and you kind of surf through there, and you listen to the various satsangs that have been recorded by various named body minds. You know, they all have, of course, some type of entitlement or name, but that's not, of course, that's never been the important thing. The important, if there's going to be any importance, it would be how is the message of Advaita being delivered there, the non-duality? How is that neo-Advaitist delivering that message? Let me say neo-Advaitist because The English language that's being used is a fairly new language compared to all the other languages on this planet, the story of Earth. In the story of Earth, there are many, many languages that have been used via action figures, via human corporeal manifestations, and they are all seemingly part of the story of Earth. So if each apparent appearance of a human corporeal manifestation has a story to tell, so does the planet. Yes, and mingling with that. There's just no... How can you deny that that's not happening, apparently? That didn't happen. Apparently so. It can be discussed, can be talked about, but does it really matter? No. In the grand scheme of all that is of empty fullness, there is no grand scheme. It only apparently appears to be a scheme. So that's what's going to be discussed and talked about. What else is there to talk about? And refer to and point to? About beingness, isn't it? Sure it is. Bottom line is being. Let's talk about that then. Well, that's what Advaita is about. Advaita is about that. But recognizing that absolutely everything is not two. Sure, it's a fact. Yeah, leave it there. No, you can't. No. That's not in the human nature of a human corporeal manifestation. It's not in its nature to do that. To do what? Well, not to do it, but to, as a figure of speech, doing. It's already being. But whilst it had believed that it was a separate person, a self, conjure self, separate from everybody and everything else, with its own birth name and birthright, and its own life to live with free will and choice to do so, whilst it thought it was that, it was continued to be that way until what? Well, it ran into a satsang, or it went into a library and came across a book about Advaita Vedanta, about non-duality, started reading it, and there. That's where it left its self-conscious self. It left it there at that library. When it walked out of the library, it realized that nobody was walking out of a library. I know it's the same story with Tony Parsons, He said there was a walk in the park, and then there was no walk in the park. And there was nobody. There was just simply a park there. And then there was just awareness, just being. And in a sense, that's just simply mingling with absolutely everything. Timeless. Just a continual beingness that never ends. It had no beginning and will have no end. That's how absolutely every single human corporeal manifestation on this entire planet is that personal and impersonal presence, both personal and impersonal presence, manifestation. It's an energetic movement of a particular frequency. Just as all the different manifestations in nature that we refer to as the various species and the various kingdoms. All of that which apparently appears to be a life form, from the microbial, from the micro to the macro realms, worlds, call it that. The apparent appearance of those kingdoms, the insect kingdom, the plant kingdom, and of course the human species, the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom's kind of part human and animal, kind of hand in hand a little bit there, kind of similar to it. But see all the manifestations of life. There's so much countenance there. You cannot keep track of the countenance. Just as there's grains of sand. Can you count every single grain of sand on every beach on the planet Earth? No, it's impossible. Just as nobody can count the countenance of the points of light, the stars, and all those suns and galaxies, and it just goes on and on. That's why the mind is so easily blown. The mind just can't grapple with it, because why? It's just trying to tolerate and cope with its limitations, its apparent appearance of limitations in space and time. So whilst it is manifesting in space and time and believes that there are parameters and there's, this limitation it has, all of that's just simply conjured. All of it's simply conjured. That absolute liberation, it's not even attainable. You're already being that. There are no levels to reach. There are no higher levels of consciousness to acquire. There is no hierarchy in the infinite universe. No. There are no extraterrestrials that are beyond. It can apparently appear that they are beyond the intellect, that they're superly highly intellectual, beyond all the human corporeal manifestations on this particular planet here, in this particular solar system, galaxy, if you will. I know, man, there's billions and billions of other galaxies, billions and billions of other solar systems. It just goes on and on, the countenance, and the mind goes, okay, I give, forget it. Leave me alone, I don't want to hear about it no more. That's it. Let's stop. Cut it out. Right there. Leave it alone. No more. You know what? Enough has to be enough eventually, doesn't it? We can continue to talk about Advaita Vedanta. We can continue to do that. And this body-mind decided to conjure up and create, these YouTube presentations and turn them into series. And so, okay, I'm doing. Does it matter? No, it's just another way of talking about the subject, or turning it into a subject, turning non-duality subject. Of course, you don't have to. It's a fact, but not to. Yeah, it's still talked about and still discussed. And you know what? This human corporeal manifestation had a choice to talk about anything. It would talk about this rather than sports. I want to talk about a sports team just because this body-mind lives in a particular city. No, I need to support my football team. Come on. Does that really matter? Jeez. It's just like if if this body-mind feels like it needs to go to the restroom, go to the bathroom, you're number 2, Drop one of these into the toilet. That's the significance of activities and doings. Just the usual things that your body mind has been doing all along. Sleeps, goes to the bathroom, eats, consumes food, gets rest, sleeps, does that all over again. And do you need to fill your day with other activities? Yeah, you walk in the park, get on a push bike, stroll around here or there, go downtown, walk around a mall, see some stores, go talk to a friend, call up on the phone, go on Facebook and communicate with a friend or whatever. Is there more to life than that? Far more than you can ever imagine. But it's being, though. It has nothing to do with the activities. And sure, the body-mind is going to continue to look for things to do. Yeah, it's going to continue going on that way. It's the functional reactions. It's the functionality. There's the automatic responses of the heart beating. That doesn't stop. The heart beating of the body-mind. Yeah. That's an autonomic response. It's automatic. You don't even... when I say you, but the body-mind doesn't even notice it unless it focuses on feeling its heart, puts the hand on its heart and goes, oh yeah, it's beating. Okay. And yeah, breathing as well. Unless you're a smoker, of course, then that body mind is going to kind of limit its oxygen intake in it. You'd be hacking, coughing left, right, center. This body mind is an ex-smoker. I think it's almost a year and a half now. Almost 2 years. So it's longer than the last time this body mind attempted to quit smoking, and that was for a year. And then I can't remember how it started. It had something to do with it might have been a birthday or some special occasion. Might have been during the holidays. That's the toughest time. If a body mind's a staunch smoker, is really into smoking, and they decide, then they say, I don't want to quit. I don't care. You're going to die anyway. Might die of something else absolutely different other than smoking. So when you say about birth and death and dying and this sort of thing, just the idea of being born and dying is just not, it's not really true. It doesn't really happen. It doesn't happen to anybody. Oh no, it really doesn't. Seriously. Being born and dying. Those are just ideas. Those are concepts. They are. They're ideas. But they were once thought to be facts. There was a subconscious conscious self that really believed it was born. And it still believes, even to this day. It's probably already shut off a few of the non-duality, let's say, satsangs that might have come across. And it already shut off that a long time ago because it still believes in itself. It still believes that it is a separate person, a very unique one at that. And then it's probably thinking to itself, I don't want to hear about this. Those people that talk about non-duality, what the hell is that? The fuck? It sounds like crazy. They're all insane. They need to be locked up. That sounds like freaking schizophrenia. Bipolar, you want to call it all these kind of mental illnesses. They're freaking Fruit Loops, man. They don't have both oars in the water. There's something going on there. They need to get their head examined. There's something wrong with that person there. Don't they realize that they are a person? Don't they realize that they were born? Don't they realize they have a very special name? They don't realize that? Really, there's something wrong with them. See, most people think in terms of that way. I mean, even this body mind was programmed, was conditioned that way to believe that. Oh yeah, what's going along with it? And it's a funny thing though when it happens though, when this recognition to realize that there are no separate people anywhere to be found, there is no separate self. No, non-separation. That's absolutely everything. It's non-separate, non-separation. There's no duality. No duality. That's all conjured. The subconscious conscious self lives in that dream reality of duality. Yeah. Reality of duality, duality of reality. That's how it operates. It operates that way. It really does. That is recognized because this body mind was that way. So what better witness, what better observer than to be that body mind that used to believe that it was a separate person in the world, in this reality, regardless if it's a dream reality or not. And how come you can't wake up if it's a dream? Why can't you wake up? Just as in the nighttime dream. You have your nighttime dream, but then you wake up from it. And then you're here. But then here is also a dream. So when are you going to wake up from this dream? And if you do, will you be somewhere else then? See, that's the unknown. That's the mystery, isn't it? Just as it's mysterious to have the night dream, and it feels so real. Have you ever had a dream? Body minds can have dreams that feel even more real than this reality. Even more real than this dream reality. The nighttime dream can sometimes seem more real than this so-called awakened dream. So in a sense, the body mind is constantly lucidly dreaming in this dream reality. And yet they are the dreamings of the content and mingling with absolutely everything that appears as it does, the empty fullness. So if we're mingling with the empty fullness, and there is no beginning, no end to that, and all human corporeal manifestations are mingling, the coalescing, blending, because they too have no beginning and no end. They too are energetic movements. And it just goes on and on like that. Ad infinitum, infinitudinal complexification. No beginning, no end. Just extraordinary. Timeless, energetic beings. Simply mingling with all that is and all that is not empty fullness, both real and unreal, observable and unobservable, knowable and unknowable. It's apparently and non-apparently so. It's both. You hear this being said constantly over and over. Oh, it apparently appears to be. Well, it's also non-apparently as well. Not only is it apparently, it's also non-apparently. It's both. It's the paradoxical situation in absolutely every concept and idea that can be thought about. It's both. See, duality focuses on either it all has to be good and avoid the bad. See the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, directions left, right. Well, I need to go over there so I can be over there. And once I'm there, what happens? That I'm here. Well, if I was over there and now I'm here, but here was considered there. It's both, see? See, so there is no here or there, there's everywhereness. It's everywhere. Yeah? So there's no fixed position. That's how it's paradoxical. We are temporary manifestations, and we are not. Non-local quality consciousness energy. A non-local quality conscious energy field of a particular frequency of resonance, oscillating. Absolutely everything is oscillations of all types of innumerable energetic movements, constantly jostling about. That's how these life forms are appearing, all these manifestations in nature. Those are all energetic movements going on. Constantly churning. And if you think you're going from here to there, you're going to see the same examples absolutely everywhere. That's the story of Earth. The story of Earth is simply revealing temporary manifestations of various life forms, and they appear to be changing. It's the apparent appearance of change happening simply because there is time in that apparent appearance. Absolutely everything is appearing as it does, of its own accord and volition. Nobody can do anything about that. Nobody needs to know anything about it. Just simply be with it. Yeah. Get with it, be with it. It's not difficult. You don't even have to try. Just as you're breathing and just as the body-mind is breathing, and just as body-mind's heart is beating. It doesn't take no effort to do that. It's just automatic. To be is automatic. Aware to being aware. As Forrest Gump would say, that's all I got to say about that.
So, but the logic is in one aspect of it, it's time, about time. First of all, time is a reality to it, yes? Thanks, bro. You were like a fisher of men. You brought a couple of fisher. The lady will just have to put some lady was coming or whatever. Not that you're not a lady from another group. Somehow. Someone told me they were coming, so I'm waiting for trying to sort of stall, so to speak, until she comes. But so this logic, first of all, let's just look at time. A lot of people don't talk about it much, I guess. But time, we believe that time is what was a past, yes? And then there's a present, and then we're inexorably moving to a future, yeah? It doesn't usually turn like left or right. It's just basically past, that has happened, this is happening, and then shit's gotta be happening, yeah? The problem is the emphasis is more on past and future. Your thought system, you don't need to look at it long, you can see it. But really, 5 minutes, it'll reveal its theme, you know? Nothing. If you go to one Seinfeld show, you get the theme, and it's all about nothing, yeah? You get them, you know, you don't have to, let's study this, you know, it's pretty, so you see the thought system, and you're listening to it all day. Let's say drop the you, there's listening to it all day. The language always presupposes a noun, you know, like you're the one that's listening to it, therefore that gives you the platform to go into guilt and shame or pride or whatever. I didn't listen to it today. Whatever, you know, it's some weird thing. So, but there's a listening to it, and it's past hearing. It's way past hearing. There's a listening to it. There's interest there. Hearing is like birds and stuff like that. You're not usually noticing the thoughts like, oh, birds are flying. People like to give you that one. Just see them as clouds in the sky. Yeah, but most people, they just, you know, these things, they're nice suggestions, but they don't work really. Because if they did, you wouldn't be at the retreat. If it was working, you wouldn't be there. You really wouldn't. So, these types of suggestions, they're difficult to do, yeah? Now, if you're in the right condition, yeah, that would be an observation. You would see thoughts as clouds. But see, then someone has an observation, but then to ask you, and you haven't had an observation. Now there's pressure to have that observation, yeah? So now you're trying to see them as clouds, and then what happens is, it doesn't matter if there's success or not, there's still a seeing them from you. See, you never gets looked at as a cloud. It doesn't. It's like the Dracula will go on all the vampire hunts because then all the suspicion is off him. You know? Oh yes, because I hate him because he's the biggest one of all. So, and I humbly believe all the attraction to all of the managing all these activities is really a way of diverting or a sleight of hand not to look at the one. So people have problems, but who is that one who has the problems? Yes? You can see, like, there's a lot of seeing going on today, but all the seeing implies only one seer. If you got that everyone was seeing, it would be a much different, joyous event. But it's you seeing, yes? Yeah. So the seeing is claimed to imply you seeing. Yeah? It would be cool if everyone's seeing. No, really, it would be. It would probably be short-lived because it was still an experience. So every bubble pops. Yeah. You ever try to keep a bubble in place? I've got yeah. That's like trying to extend an experience. It just doesn't work. Yeah. You know. So the logic has timing, obviously. So there's this feeling of past, present, future, and it just goes that way. And so it's difficult to maybe even entertain that which comes after is implied to be before. We don't. It doesn't make sense because we think after is after and before is before, past is before. So, you know, when people get into the mind candy of talking about time, and all time is happening right now. Sounds good, but not many people are experiencing that way, you know. Past, present, future, but it's true, it's all arising. But when it's logically claimed by this, it's put in a line. Past, present, future. Now you can talk about past and future is not so at all, but it still has a huge, in this logic and with us as these single action figures, it seems to have, yes, there was past, this is present, and this future. And the present doesn't really be seeming to get much play, does it? Really? It really doesn't. Even if we try to, the past and the future keep encroaching seemingly, as if they're like barbarians at the fucking wall. They keep coming in and ruining our fucking Saturday. That's where Tuesday is lurking and got that deadline next week. So it's sort of like, how can I really relax when I'm going to be tense Wednesday? You know? So the time but it's more the linear part of it. So the mental state does something tricky to us. It uses an activity of claiming or assuming, and so what's happening, like thoughts are happening. You're not like the manufacturer of thoughts. There's manufacturing of thoughts, but you're not the manufacturer of it. It's like you have a factory and there's a lot of companies that you have no idea are using the facilities producing stuff. And every time you see it, it has your name tap stamped on it. Oh, these are my thoughts. But you don't remember making them and asking for them, do you? No. So there's thoughts, feelings, sensations. You have tons of them. Stomach, gurgling, there's tons of shit going on. If you put like a stethoscope almost anywhere, wow. Blood pumping, muscles contracting. I mean, there's tons of movement, yes? And we could say they're feelings or sensations. So there's feelings and sensations, there's thoughts, and all of these are happening. And then the mental state, which is there, it's brought to this position of acknowledgement of the thoughts by consciousness. Consciousness is what's providing the light. It's sort of like if I was in this room and if the lights were off, I wouldn't see anything. Yes? Now you would say I have sentience, but I wouldn't be seeing much. You know what I mean? I wouldn't. Yeah? But with the light on, there's a chair. Yes? So now there's a light on thoughts and feelings. When you were a baby, the light wasn't directed there, really. Yeah? There was no central spotlight looking. It was just kids, whatever. I don't know, maybe they had thoughts go by, but there's no capturing any of them until a certain point. Then they go into the mind and, separate and all like that. So, all right, so thoughts. We're just going into it tonight because it's fun. So thoughts. So there's this logic. So the mental state does one movement. It only has one movement. Yeah? And the movement is claiming. Yeah? It claims. Yeah? How does it claim? By inference, by assuming. So it tries to get to this point by going like this. Actually, with the idea of being you, it goes, I was you. Yeah, in the past. I have pictures to prove it. I will be you, therefore I am you. It doesn't start with I am you. It's I am you, and then I was, I will be, and gets to I am. Where what we are is I am. It doesn't need any bumper shot. It doesn't need any reflection because it's a light of itself. It's on, yeah? It doesn't need proof that it was on by I was on, I'm going to be on, therefore I'm on, next ball now. It doesn't need to go that way. So the claiming claims the action, claims the feeling, claims the sensation. Now you're not doing this. This is just a process, a very fast process of claiming. Yeah? Conscious contact, you see a thought. There's an action done, they're easier to notice, right? Feelings. And then there's a claiming of those feelings to do what? To imply there's a one. Yeah? So, all right, so every thought pretty much that goes through this little very, very small, there's the consciousness, but the mental sentience is pretty myopic, yeah? Because it's filtered through self-centeredness. It's got a very small view. So whatever thoughts appear to it, or it gets to see, it claims them. And it claims them to imply the thinker. Yeah, so how many, could be a terrible thought, can be a great thought, it's usually going to be claimed to imply the thinker. It doesn't matter the grade or the quality of the thought, it's just the fucking volume of the thought. It needs a lot of thoughts because it's like a magic trick. It's got to keep pointing for an assumption to take place where you go, this is the thinker. This is, which is insane to believe this can't even fucking, when daylight savings occurs, he can't even remember which hour went what, but this is the thinker. Come on, it's a fucking stretch, yeah? It puts it on, And then all these feelings, some exquisite, some crude, gas or whatever, some of this stuff. Stuff between material and gaseous, so these things, it claims them to imply the feeling, yes? So whatever happens, you're not conscious or unconscious, there's a claim going on, yeah? And so it uses what's happening to prove that there's someone that's either doing it or being done to by it, really. That's it, it goes either way. Yeah. So that which comes after, which is this arriving at as a doer, which comes after the doing. So the doing is first. So there's just doing. There's just feeling, there's just seeing, there's just tasting, there's touching, there's acting. All of these things are happening. And those things are being used to imply that there's a doer, a thinker, a haver, a loser, all this stuff. Yes? That's so, and so that which is implied is after the fact, but suddenly it gets presupposed to be before the fact, so it becomes the fact now. That you're Paul, who's seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching. It would seem to be, so what? What does it matter? Well, see what happens. See what happens when that is in place. The emphasis on living gets moved to a narration or an interpretation of living. Yeah. So now, the important thing is you were living or you will be living. The living itself is really underemphasized because in this moment, the activities aren't like the splash of fresh running water. They're just being used to point to rehashing, rethinking, refeeling, resenting, redoing, re-da-da-da-da-da, yes? So the aliveness is used to deaden, in a sense, the aliveness, and the importance is more, I was alive, and I'm gonna be alive. So a lot of people are doing a lot of shit with the hopes that they're gonna arrive at a much better fucking place. And they're always rudely disappointed when they arrive there, and the there that they arrived to is here. And so suddenly, the same thing that drove them to want to get out of here is driving them to want to get out of there. Now, their idea was, they'll never have that drive to get out of there when I arrive there, but it's here. It doesn't make much difference, yeah? Because for that thing to continue, it's like for it to keep, quote unquote, live, it has to stay agitated. It can't rest. Because its irrelevance or its non-existence would become obvious. So it has to constantly be agitating to me. Yes? So it's always in this desiring to become and unbecome. It's desiring to become things it doesn't think it is, and ultimately the idea of being a thing, a separate, independent, separate entity, and it's trying to unbecome things it believes it is, which it isn't either. So it's not going to be what it wants to be, and it ain't what it's wanting not to be. So it just fuels like a eternal slinky. Doesn't need a stare, just go. And this is why some master will say, hey, you can't use activity to produce stillness. That would be activity, you see? There's a fundamental little trap we all can fall into. Hey, how are you? Come on and grab this chair too. There's a fundamental little trap you fall into, yes? Yeah, how you doing, guys? We started a little, we started right on time. All right. Have you ever heard anything?
No.
No, all right.
No, because you're not here.
It's the first time.
Let's reel back. All right? All right, simple. It's a simple invitation. We're talking about, actually from a topic called non-duality. You may run into it. It's all in vogue now in small circles.
In vogue.
And non-duality in one level is just a negation. Non means not, and then duality means two. So what do they mean by two-ness? All right, let's shrink it down to the two-ness that seems to occupy us. So subject, object.
Oh, man.
So sometimes you're the thinker of thoughts, yeah? That would mean a subjective position. Sometimes you're the object of thoughts. Sometimes you're sitting there thinking about you as this body, as this action figure. That would mean you're an object. And sometimes you feel like you're the thinker about someone else. That would make you the subject, yes? So the subject and object is the agitation, yes? So the subject decides, I think I need to go on a retreat, yes? Very important. I'm going to go on a 10-day retreat. Never been on one at all. But I'll get right into it, I'm sure. And so he goes there, the subject arrives there, but then what starts attending the retreat is the object. And the object's been sitting for 10 hours, and its fucking ass hurts. And it's going to figure out, how the fuck can I lift this left cheek? And I just, why did I ever decide to come here? Yeah, because the object would have said, no freaking way, I'm sitting 13 hours in a freaking day. But the subject, this is going to be shooting up to the stars. And the subject loves to go where the body gets dragged to. The body doesn't want to sit for 13 hours, doesn't want to chant, I'm not a body. It's just whatever, yes? So there's this subject-objectness. And again, the you just bounces back and forth. You as an object, you as the subject, you as the object, you as the subject. Yes, which one is it? It's neither, really. And it's just subject-object. So what the message of non-duality is there's none of that. In fact, none of that is true. It's activities that are happening in a larger context that doesn't have a split of subject-object. It's not this or that. It can't be close or far. It's just what is. So let's say it would be like this, this room. You could divide this room with like 5 walls, but would the space really be divided? Do the walls take up space? They appear in space, yeah? The space would still be completely whole as it is, no matter how many things you divided it. When you took the wall down, would you have to rush in with space to fill it up? No, the space, this is appearing in space. This is appearing in space. This isn't taking up space. When we die, the space doesn't get lighter. It's just nothing. It's just, so that's what is, yeah? And then here, in this place of appearing, because whatever comes and goes is an appearance. Mm-hmm. There is no real thing. There is no object that doesn't come and go.
Yep.
Yes? Reality is not of things. So this place of coming and going, there's no reality in a sense here, other than what? There's a lending of reality by the subject that we are. Not the subject-object dichotomy, but the subject looking through subject-object. Suddenly, it forgets that it's dreaming, and it takes itself to be the strength. And
you see, the looking through, what he just said right there, the looking through, that is what we all are. We're part of the energy field out of nowhere, from nothing. And the seeing through is that energetic movement of beingness, manifestation, impermanently, temporarily, manifesting as a human corporeal unit of local in space and time, manifesting a human corporeal appearance for an indeterminate duration in space and time. It will not always appear exactly the same as that appearance of energetic movement because of what's referred to as entropy, or energy that begins to slow down a bit after timing that manifestation. See, the course of energy that runs through, it is likened to a light bulb, okay? Just kind of try to use this analogy. See if you can, if you entertain this analogy. Yes? The light bulb, okay? The light bulb is a representation of the body, mind appearance, yeah? And after so many times of that light switch being turned on and so to allow what? When the light switch is turned on, it allows the electricity to go through the wiring, that light bulb may be connected with. And so when the electricity current is running through and it hits that filament, and what does it produce? Of course, although it's artificial light, it is still light nonetheless. So in a sense, these human corporeal manifestations are appearances of artificial light. Now, artificial in the sense that it's going through what appear to be as though filters, because it is also likened to a, take a campfire and you have sparks shooting off that campfire right into the air. Each of those sparks could be a representation of a human corporeal manifestation as well. You see, the source of the fire itself, the energy that's being released, that energy that's released and moving about various states, appearing in certain states. But to put that in a time frame, say of an average 50, 60, 70 years for a human corporeal manifestation, it has been receiving, in a sense, the light switch on, the electricity going through, hitting the light bulb, getting that filament to light. Certain brightness, right? Certain illumination. Okay? It's the illumination of light that's likened to the temporary manifestation. The manifestation of a human corporeal apparent appearance in space and time is likened to the light that's being emitted off of a light bulb. And for so much time that's going to continue, as long as it's fed the electricity to light that filament up, is similar to the human corporeal manifestation of a body-mind. It will continue to appear. Now, after a while, so much time going by, which is why there's this indeterminate duration of time that goes by. So we can't predict when that light bulb's going to burn out, can you? It's going to burn out eventually. Why does it burn out? Because the integrity of that filament that is taking on that electricity to produce the light emitted from the light bulb, those lumens, could be 50 watts, could be 75 watts, could be 150 watts of illumination. 50 watt light bulb. 75 watt light bulb is going to emanate a bit more illumines, a brighter brightness than a 45 watt bulb. A 75 watt bulb, more brightness than a 50 watt bulb. A 100 watt bulb, brighter than a 75 watt. And then you have halogen lights and a different type of light. Halogen light's different than a light bulb's kind of light. And then you have the different frequency ranges of light emissions from various light bulbs. See, here's where we get into the infinitudinal complexification of energetic movements. So to take a scientific approach to describing the setup, this apparent appearance of the setup, you can use a scientific approach. When I say scientific approach, you can using the English language, you can come up with knowable or observable experimentations and take certain items that most human corporeal manifestations are familiar with and use those as analogies to point to the way that everything apparently appears to seemingly be, and how we are and we are not, and how this is and it isn't. all that is and all that is not, empty fullness. How it is observable and unobservable, knowable and unknowable, simultaneously, real and unreal. We are and we are not. It is and it isn't. We're blending, we're mingling, we're coalescing constantly as various energetic movements of different resonances, different frequency ranges. That's why the appearances are so different. One human corporeal appearance can appear and manifest entirely different than another. It's because the energetic movements on a different frequency range. Here's another analogy. The FM band of a radio station, right? The frequency modulation, yeah? Radio stations are on there. You use a tuner. You go through the band, FM band. You start, let's say at the low end, 88, the frequencies, 88.5, 90.5, 105.5, and then 115, and then reaches maybe 160, 170, and there's the range where these radio stations are going to broadcast on. Using that analogy, the reality frame, dream reality, the way it's set up, it appears to be so, and these human corporeal manifestations are each of those radio stations that are broadcasting on that band. Some can actually bleed over the next one. There could be a radio station on 101.5, and then 101.6, there's a radio station right there next to it broadcasting, and you get this bleed over effect, that its signal broadcasts and kind of overlaps into the other one. Or it could override. One radio station, 105, could be broadcasting on, let's say, 100,000 watts, or 150,000, or 200,000 watts, a very strong output, And so it bleeds over and takes over kind of the broadcast and transmission of that 106 frequency. 105, man, it has a very strong signal. So this is a way to kind of present the idea regarding manifestations of human corporeal manifestations. Some are broadcasting quite a bright brilliance. But that can't be gauged, can it? In a sense, you could say that one human corporeal manifestation can emit a stronger energy field, yes. And perhaps the Buddha, Siddhartha, Christ, Jesus Christ, Muhammad, all of these so-called prophets that were bringing wisdom, I say wisdom, regarding the message of Advaita. Well, there was Buddhic traditions, but the Upanishads were just beginning to innocently share this information regarding self-inquiry and self-awareness, regarding Advaita, the not-two, non-duality, and all that, in the ancient days. So there was certain figures that were given certain names, teacher of righteousness and master of justice, and these entitlements, and then came the guru, and various gurus that had a little bit more brilliance regarding its manifestation, its emanation. It was simply a little bit brighter, just a brighter light bulb, or a stronger radio station broadcasting. Just thought I'd just share those analogies, because they are relevant, they're pertinent to the non-duality theme, or when we're referring to Advaita Vedanta, speaking of non-duality.
And then everything it's dreaming has the ability to affect it. As the dreaming, it's not affected, but it can be seemingly appearing to be true to it. If I'm a thing, then I can be affected. So now thoughts can freaking drive you crazy, even though you're dreaming them. So suddenly, the power that we are has been lent to things, and those things are biting us in the ass. And many of us take a victim role, or powerless role, or this or that, I'm in a terrible dream and they're imposing all this shit on me. But really, if you look at it, ultimately, maybe you're the dreaming of the dreaming. Maybe you're the mind that's dreaming, not the thing that's appearing in the dream, but the dreaming of the dream. That would change a lot, yes? Maybe instead of looking at everything like this, of how it pertains to you, the you that now is entertained would be very, very big, so you would see like, root, and then there would be no whys. Fuck, it doesn't care anymore.
Yeah.
I don't care how it
never
pertains to me, really.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just pertaining. So this message
How
is...
can that be overlooked? How can you miss that?
It's just an invitation. It's an invitation. A lot of
How
people
can
in
you
this room have
overlook
done most of
So
the late work.
easily
Could
overlooked.
save you a lot of time if you listen to them. There's probably hundreds of years of trying to get out of a self as a self.
they're going to tell you
and it
the
hasn't
story.
worked well.
Their life
And
story.
after they blamed themselves and berated themselves and thought it was because they didn't listen enough or study enough,
this,
they
that, and the
probably
other.
come to the
Yeah.
same conclusion.
Duality.
Self can't get out of self.
This, that,
Yes,
and
that which you would like to get out of, you can't get out of as that which you'd like to get out of. So if you're identified as the problem, that's the problem. Because the problem seeking a solution, not knowing that it's going to arrive at the solution and make it a problem. Yes, this is like so self can't get out of self. Yes? So this is the question, and maybe, just maybe, then at least you would, let's say, be rebooted, so to speak, because now the source code has been questioned. It's not questioning the programming and the format, it's just the source code. Does all this imply a someone? I just don't see it anymore. I just think everything is verbing, and there's no one that all the things are pointing at. We give them the pointing ability. It's just like this. This is just a bottle. Everyone sees it. Yeah, but the mental state uses this bottle to claim that there's my bottle. If my head goes, this is mine. See? And so the bottle's reality is lent to this fake little ghost reality. Yeah? So there's thousands of thoughts, and they're all held as my thoughts. So each one of them noted goes, he's pointing at this imaginary someone, and then you're pictured as a body. And now the body becomes the depository of all the claiming. All the claiming, almost like it's like this living clay of claiming, and then there's some breath put into it for like 80 years, and now this walks around believing it's the doer, the thinker, the feeler, the haver, the loser, the one who's terrible, the one who's pretty good, unless he's really terrible, the unlovable one, or the most lovable one, or the pride, all of these little, like, fucking mental handkerchiefs that go flying out of this thing all day, you know? And you know, at night you go to sleep and all of it gets dismissed as if it never happened, and then if you're lucky or unlucky, whatever, you wake up in the morning and it's, you know, there's a leather jacket, you put it on and you play another episode of the Fonz, you know, happy days, and you head of an act, but now you start wearing it quite loosely.
Hey, whoa.
Your joy isn't based on outside circumstances and situations. Your sense of inherent okayness isn't procured or acquired. It's not attained, so it can't be lost. Yes, you don't have it, so you can't lose it. And it skirts a lot of the little mechanisms of getting you caught again. Yes, because it's a beautiful answer. Because you're not trying to get out, you realize you're not in, yes? And in the realization you're not in, those urges to want to get out dismiss, and the validity of that logic rings pretty well. You realize, Jesus Christ, I've been trying to get out of what I've not been in for 30 years. Yeah, so now you're not wasting time looking for what can't be found. You don't have many metaphysical questions. I don't think I've run into a why in a long time. I hear them occasionally, but I veer right away. The why is just, why not? And, you know, things get really simple. And then, really, maybe this is the ultimate success. all that obscured and mutated thing you call spirituality is just totally removed out of you. You have no interest in it whatsoever. I would say that's complete success, really. I mean, normalcy is like the greatest place to hide. No one wants it. Everyone wants to look
Yeah, it's
special,
boring.
have special
Yeah.
experiences. But it's a
No
wide
drama.
range in there. Yeah,
Nothing special going on. Yeah, nothing happening.
Can't add or subtract from it. Yeah, it's always available at all
That's
times.
so beautiful
And if
right
you just
there. That in itself.
entertain it, you may see it as everything.
Yeah,
And then you're truly onto something because
it's everything.
once the mechanism
Absolutely
fires
everything. Oh yeah.
and you only hear it's like exhaust burp at the third one, you're sort of caught in it in a sense. There's no you caught, but there's a caught in it. You gotta see it before you get in the vehicle. Yeah. And then there's an abstaining. You can just go, hey, and then the vehicle drives
Let
and
it
drives.
go.
And it's a self-driving vehicle. You see, you believe it's you.
Yeah, it's
but it isn't.
self-propelled.
There's never been you.
Yeah.
And things have gone on just the way they're going on.
That which you're not.
So when you say, well, if there is not a you, everything's going to stop. No, there's never been a you, and it just continues on. Yeah. And then, in a sense, it's weird. You'll be more of an individual when you're not taking yourself to be. Yeah. You'll be able to really, whatever, free range in a way. So I found this non-duality, and I thought it was going to be. I thought of many things. I thought it was going to
be the ultimate.
I couldn't see it as any other way that I saw everything else, as a path or something. And this is not a path. And it's so funny that we use the word
it'll
path.
illuminate
Because
any
the only
path
thing that takes a
that you're
path is a
on.
body. Right? Does the spirit take a path? Where did it start? Where did the spirit move? Like the tip top of the spiritual mountain. That's only a body going up there. The fucking spirit doesn't go up to the top of the mountain. It's already there. Yeah? The whole language of spirituality is framed as a body. The dark night of the soul. What the fuck has a dark night of the soul? Not the soul, for sure. The mental state has a dark night. It also has dark days. You know what I mean?
The title
When we say there's one
album.
thing, spirituality, there's no spirituality, it's a mental malady. There's an obsessiveness, the interest and attention for some reason that could be enriching your day, in a lot of ways is enslaving you to yesterday and tomorrow. And we can't seem to be able to pull away from that narration in one's head. And in a way it's good, because if you keep trying to pull away, you're pulling away as that, which is only going to reinforce it. Yeah. If you move, it has you. If you don't move, it seems to have you. But if you see it before, you'll see it as an activity, and activities can end. Activities can end.
Yep.
It's like if you stopped the person and said, who's running, and you said, hey, maybe you're not a runner. It's maybe stop running. There you go. But as long as he just never entertains the possibility, hey, you can stop. What? Yeah. It's not even like that, though, because it's tricky. The stopping can be claimed also by the head. You just got to see the tricks it uses, and so when you're in the audience, you'll see the magic. You'll see the magician. You'll see how he diverts your attention and does something else. You'll see it, and if you're seeing it, that means you're not that. Yes. If you can see something, you're not that. Obviously, it's got to hit you sooner or later. If you see activities that are implying you're at that moment, you're the you that was before all implying.
In other words, and Paul used to say it many times in other such things, that whatever can be perceived is not what's being perceiving. It's not that which is perceiving something is not the perceiver of something. In other words, anything that could be cognized taking the mental thought system and entertaining a single thought, that perceiver of that thought is being perceived by that which you're not, which is that self-conscious conscious self calling itself the perceiver of perception, and we're not that.
The seeing can see what implies you. You can see it, not looking from it. That's the identification with the activity. But you can see the activity. How can you not? If you report about it, there's a seeing of it. There's been a seeing of it, and then there's a reporting. There's no reporting that leads to the seeing. There's seeing, and then there's a reporting. All the downloads that have happened through this, there was energetic reconfiguration. Then the downloads were understood. Yeah. Then they could be presented. But there was, the juice is there already. The understanding doesn't lead to that. The understanding is a way of explaining that here. Yeah. Or inferring it or suggesting it here. Yeah. But the understanding has no light of its own. The understanding is illuminated by the light. Yeah? The light is inherently available at all times, right where we are. There's no requirement necessary. How can you... The worst day you were seeing, just like the best day. The worst terrible thing you had eyes to see. And the best day you were seeing. It has no discrimination. It has no volition. The seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching is the 5 expressions of consciousness.
No agendas.
And consciousness is not a thing.
No separate plans, no processes. It's just radical freedom. It's absolute liberation.
Here's a thought. There's the idea of being a thinker. Then there's the
liberation.
body. Then there's consciousness. Then there's awareness.
Stopped liberation, but a continuous.
Instead of going awareness, consciousness, and starting here, and then looking for this way,
liberation.
Go back and you'll arrive at what you've been looking for. Mm-hmm. And when you arrive at what you've been looking for, it'll tell you it's always been available at all times. So did you arrive? No, that gets negated. Yeah. You have it maybe for a minute, the story.
You thought you did.
And then it's just chopped like freaking bamboo.
Yeah.
Yeah. This way, go back. You know, a very good thing to use if you run into any difficulty. Ask, who is it? You know, to yourself. Just have a question like,
that's
all
self-inquiry.
right, just worrying about next week.
That's how
you're getting really jacked up. And you
normally
go, well, just let's
for
insert this little question. Who is it that's worrying about next week?
Corporeal action figures that still believe they're a separate self.
And then you go, me. It goes me. The head will go, me. Like, you know, like a little. It's like when you catch a robocall. Yeah. You don't say anything, and it's suddenly yeah, all right. Then you go, oh, well, who's this me? Yeah, and just put it on the dime for a second. Well, yeah. And so then hopefully, not only that, you'll diagnose the event. You'll see worrying about next week doesn't matter much unless it's me. Yes, exactly. You'll see where the meaning's coming from. It's not coming from next week. You think next week is driving you crazy. It's the you that's driven crazy by next week. It's giving it the meaning, and then the meaning's biting it in its ass. It's like this diagnosis of this same example in a very famous book that you probably don't know about, The Course in Miracles, only from 1970s or something. And it says, to me, this is one of the greatest diagnoses of everyone's day. So the assumption in The Course in Miracles is that we are the dreaming, that this is dreaming. Yes, this is like a dream you have at night. Maybe you would call it the awake dream. If you didn't wake up to this, the dream you had at night would be this to you, yes? If you didn't wake up to have a comparison to that dreaming, it would be this. There would be the reality you were in. Yeah, and then you would be saying, and in that reality, you would have another idea of a dream to lend a reality to the bigger dream. Yes, this is what happens. So you think you know, oh, that's dreaming while you're dreaming. It's just like when
That's
it's
fucked
amazing.
up, man.
It's amazing. As soon as we can name something that exempts us, we're right in the same freaking act, but whatever. You and I are the dreaming of the dream. Yeah.
Talk
We
about
forget that we're
paradox,
dreaming.
man.
This is
Capital
incredible.
P,
How the hell could that happen? It can't. Yeah? But it can seem to happen, which is my favorite word in the English language, seemingly. It appears to be true or false to you. Now, it doesn't appear to be true or false. It can't. It has to appear to be true or false to you. There's a reality, which is you in this situation, and then things and shit can appear to be true or false to you. Now, that's on a little scale and on a huge scale. We don't like to go to the huge scale because there's a lot of fucking drama and fucking resentment and fight, on the little scale. You motherfucker. So we don't want to go there. But as below, so above, micro, macro. See, if you see a principle in you can expand it to a very huge size. Why not? Why play small? Yeah, really. Come on, isn't it fucking tiring enough? Just let your mind go. You don't have to have 800,000 examples. 4 or 5 can do. Where you just boom, open up. All right, so you and I are giving everything all the meaning it has in the streaming. This is another lesson. That's an incredible statement. You and I give everything all the meaning it has. That's 2 absolutes in one sentence. It's incredible. Try to get out of that. You're giving everything all the meaning it has. There's no exemption clause. You're in. You're it. You're dreaming. All right. You and I are giving everything all the meaning it has. All right. You and I, we're dreaming. We forget that we're dreaming. This is my little addition to the idea. How it seems to be true is there's an act of being identified as a thing. So the dreaming takes itself to be the dreamt. Yeah, it can only do that in time because it can never do it in fact. But in time, it can seem to be true. Yes, time is the main ingredient. I know it may be over. It doesn't matter. Just you'll get something knows what I'm saying. Yeah. So yes. So suddenly, all right. So now the dreamings seemingly forgot that it's dreaming, and that dreaming is giving everything all the meaning it has. Remember that everything all the meaning it has. The dreaming forget it's dreaming by being identified as a dream, and now everything it's dreaming has the ability to affect it. Ooh, that's it right there. So it sounds great. I'm giving you everything all the meaning has. And what? The dogs are coming at me. It's like the guy in Game of Thrones, and his dogs eat him at the end. Remember the guy, the bastard guy? He's had these terrible dogs. He's sick on people, and they love me. But then he's caught, and they haven't eaten 4 days, and the dogs come in, they eat the hell out of him. Yeah, so here you go. Thoughts, my feelings, my actions. Why did I do that? Please help me. I'm a fucking sheep. On and on. Tongues. What happened? What happened? You told me I'm the dreaming of the dreaming. Well, I didn't tell you this is the dreaming of the dreaming. See, this is another little hook. There's only a few hooks. You have to come back a few weeks. Because this is another explanation. Because suddenly, all right, so when people hear about the dreaming, it's just casually taken to be you hearing. So now the dreamt just suddenly thinks it's the one hearing about the dreaming. That's another little. Then it goes off on another freaking track. Because now you're thinking, oh, well, I should have everything I want then if I'm dreaming. I should have 50 Cadillacs. No. You know what happens when there's a realization you're dreaming? Acceptance occurs. You will start accepting things as they are. Really? Even though you find thousands of faults in the past, you're like, fuck it,
Sort of like a surrender.
Because you are actually dreaming right now this.
Just let it be.
Why are you in an argument with it?
There you go. Let it be.
Yeah.
Let it all be.
But how can it be? How can you accept that easily?
Matter.
Because it's not so.
There you go.
Yeah. It's not so. The longest most of us are going to live is 100 years.
Yeah.
What's that? Nothing really.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
Especially to this planet, to the Earth, the story of Earth. Some brief split
Time
second.
is just made up.
Yeah. It's a way
You
of
can, when you're having a bad day, it
keeping
lasts
track of-
forever. When you're having fun, it goes
keeping track of
fast. You don't
nothing
see, what do you think, you're on like one of those trend
Time is
machines?
keeping track of
You go,
nothing
"Wow."
happening.
No, it's response,
No.
you're dreaming it. You know, when the little girl, this sucks. Every second goes so slow. Oh, I wish this would last forever, it's over. Because you're gonna be the butt of every cosmic joke, as long as you have a butt. As long as you think you have a butt, you're gonna be the butt of all the jokes. And then, but you can really laugh about them. Just like in recovery, I'm in recovery from drugs and alcohol. Terrible things seem to have happened to me there. But I can laugh about them like crazy. And some of them, their effects are happening right now. I mean, I got run over one night and its effects have gone on for 38 years. But what the hell? What are you gonna do? You know, I mean, somehow, something, you know. Maybe I had a bill to pay. I don't know. The cosmic register. Oh, here they are. We're going to end this meeting soon. This lady has come not to see me. She's come a long way. She's coming. Just lay down over there. There's some pillows there. So we're going to end. Yeah, because she does. I'm not going to. She just went from Pescara to Rome to LA, LA to here. She doesn't want to hear salsa.
She doesn't even know.